Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Bandung Community Conversation. Appreciate your bearing with us. I'm Lisa Gold, she, her, hers. I am the Executive Director of the Asian American Arts Alliance, or A4, we are a 40-year-old arts service organization dedicated to ensuring greater representation, equity, and opportunities for Asian American, Pacific Islander artists and arts organizations. I am so happy to be in community with you all tonight, as well as with the unbelievable, amazing Amy Andrea, the Executive Director of MoCADA and co-founder of the Bandung Residency Program. Amy?
I love that you're the only person who knows how to say my last name right. So thank you, firstly, for that, like in the world, aside from my family. So thank you. I am excited about today. We talk about moving beyond echo chambers all of the time. What does that mean? What does it mean to go outside of our communities, to bridge alliances with other organizations, with other artists, with other individuals, scholars, etc. But making sure that, we are building community in a way where we have various touch points beyond those who reflect our own value systems and our own kind of trains of thought. So I'm excited that we have Mohiba Ahmed today with us, who will be exploring this conversation. But before we start there, a land acknowledgement, yes? You already know what the Bandung residency is about. I don't have to talk about that. Give me 1 second, because I have like a trillion windows on my computer. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that this country would not exist if it wasn't for the free, enslaved, and indentured labor of people of color. We honor this legacy, knowledge, and skills stolen due to violence and white supremacy. While the movement for justice and liberation is building and we are witnessing the power of the people, many of us are still being met with violence in its many forms and manifestations every day. We offer this land recognition in solidarity with Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island and the efforts and deliberate intentions towards decolonization. We acknowledge the land of Turtle Island and that it was never meant to be owned. We recognize that most of the land that was entrusted to the Indigenous peoples was in some cases shared by choice, but all too often taken by force. We recognize the historical colonialism and the ongoing colonialism that has led to the present day situation where land acknowledgements are offered in place of land. We acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that sustains us, express deep gratitude to its Indigenous peoples, and pledge to honor our dignity and divinity that ultimately connects us all. We recognize that we occupy land originally and still inhabited by the Lenape peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. Passing it to you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Amy. I am so thrilled to introduce Mohiba. Mohiba Ahmed, as Amy said, Mohiba is a community organizer at DRUM, Desis Rising Up and Moving, and she's going to share stories and her experiences tonight about her organizing efforts moving beyond our echo chambers. If you, let's see, I want to share, if people, Mohiba, you're going to talk about what DRUM is, right? So I don't need to, okay. But prior to, Mohiba has been organizing Pakistani and South Asian working class communities in New York since 2022. But prior to her work in New York City, her leadership was pivotal in the foundation of a historic student collective in Lahore, Pakistan, and she served as the spokesperson of a nationwide student mass movement emerging at the back of decades of state suppression of student and worker unions. And she is one of the founders of Pakistan's Haqooq-e-Khalq People's Rights Party and the Progressive Students Collective. So I am going to turn it over to you, Mohiba, to, just before you start, I just wanted to say one of the things that I'm so excited to have you join us tonight is because I was really impressed by one of the discussions that you led talking about failures about organizing as well as successes. And I think we have so much to learn from our mistakes. And I really appreciate your openness and generosity in sharing that. And so I really look forward to learning from you tonight. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's just a pleasure to be here with all of you, and thank you for having me as a panelist. I think it's a very important topic today that we want to discuss, and hopefully we're able to recognize if we belong to any echo chambers, and we also are able to move beyond them. First, I wanted to introduce the organization that I am working with in New York City, which is Drum, Desis Rising Up and Moving. It is a Desi, which is South Asian and Indo-Caribbean organization that organizes working class people in both Desi and Indo-Caribbean communities. As Lisa mentioned, prior to organizing within the US, which I've just started doing 2 years ago, because I came to the US 3 years ago, but before that, for 9 years, I was organizing back in Pakistan with the student movement, the labor movement, and just organizing working class in Lahore, Pakistan. I just wanted to ask again if I can get a thumbs up if everyone can see the presentation. Yeah, okay, great. So let's just dive right in. We'll begin with a little bit of grounding on what are echo chambers and why are they a problem. So basically, this is a phenomena that we see more and more today in the age of social media, where we are on online platforms, virtual platforms, and we just tend to just be with people who share the same perspectives, who share the same opinions as ourselves, and we tend to avoid people which have like really radically opposite views to our own views, and that is essentially what an echo chamber is. Basically a space or an environment where you're getting the information, you're getting the opinions that just reinforce what you already know. And so it's not adding on to any information, and not giving you any new information, but just reinforcing what you already know and tend to believe in. So what is the problem with just hanging out with people who share the same values? I think that the problem that we face in an echo chamber is a lot of misinformation, because what the opinions that we hold close to us might not be objectively true. And what do I mean by objectively true? The reality is not one-sided. Reality is much more expansive than that. And the reality holds a lot of perspectives within it. And what happens when you remain within an echo chamber is that you just get a very distorted view and perspective of reality. So you just get one side of reality, not the entire picture. And what it does to you is that it makes it very difficult for you to engage with any opposing viewpoints that you would face, and that becomes a problem, because you don't only want to move people that already agree with you. You want to move people that don't agree with you, that don't hold the same opinions, or don't hold the same morals, or all of those things as you do. And so it becomes really hard to move those people when you don't even know where they're coming from, because you've never really engaged with them. You've only engaged with people who share the same values as you. And what happens, like, how do these echo chambers manifest today? How are we also impacted by this phenomena? More than ever, these days, the echo chambers form online in the virtual spaces. also in like social groups, but more than that, online, because it is very easy to find like-minded people online. That's just what it is. And how do you recognize that even online, this particular social group or this website or this group of people, like they just are an echo chamber, are not showing you the real perspective of things, is when they're just like, you're just supporting each other's perspective and you're not even engaging with the people who are coming up with like, different thoughts or perspectives. Or even if you are, you're just like uh attacking them because you think what they hold is not true and what you believe in is true. And so the only way that you engage with them is from a point of view that you are wrong. And so you just need to know that what we hold is true. And so you need to believe that. And so how do you avoid being in echo chambers? That is what we're going to discuss today. How do you make sure that you are engaging with objective viewpoints? How do you make sure that you are interacting with people who have different perspective than yours? Because one thing that we need to establish here is that if you really, really want something to be true, that doesn't mean that it is true. And there might be a different material reality to it that you haven't been exposed to because you remain to be in an echo chamber. And so with that grounding, we'll move on forward as to how do we engage with the echo chambers and moving beyond them. So these are the three like questions that I'm going to be focusing on today. How do we organize and reach people to build our movement beyond our echo chambers? How do we get our message across to people, again, outside our echo chambers? And how can we make an impact on those whose opinions and actions we are seeking to change? And so we'll begin with the first question. How do we organize? How do we reach people? How do we build our movement? So there are several ways which I have experienced as an organizer, both in the context of organizing in the global South, which is Pakistan, and the global North, which is the US and New York. And like some lessons that I've learned that I would want to share with you all, and that could be useful in making sure that we just don't get stuck in our echo chambers and we are able to build a larger movement. So we will go over some of the lessons that I've learned one by one and how they can be effective. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was combating liberalism. What do we mean by liberalism? What is individualism? What are all of these isms that we want to avoid if we don't want to get stuck in an echo chamber? So all of these ideologies are just ways of the system of capitalism, of the system of neo-imperialism, all of these bigger systems that are working in the world and the systems that we live in today, that want to make sure that the people are always weaker, that the people do not have the unity to fight the bigger systems of oppression. And how do they do that? By making sure that they're seeping all of these ideologies within how we work, how we present ourselves online or in real life, in workplaces, in institutions. I think that is something that I really wanted to focus on. That I think when you talk about this time of social media, what happens is that everybody tends to believe that the opinions that they hold are the most important. That is not their fault. It is the fault of the system that has given us this ideology that individuals are important, collectives are not. And so because we think that way, that is how we present ourselves when we interact with each other in a social setup of any kind, whether it's virtual, whether it's it's not virtual. And because of the fact that every person has their own space to say whatever it is that they want to say without any accountability, I think that that creates a very dangerous dynamic of just people believing in the fact that whatever they believe is the ultimate truth. And that's the first thing that we want to avoid if we want to move beyond echo chambers. We want to change the way that we think. We don't want to think only that our needs or our opinions are important, but we want to think collectively for everyone, all of the people who are oppressed within this system. How does everyone get affected or how your personal opinion might be impacting negatively any other community or any other group that is also being oppressed under this system. So liberalism, individualism, dogmatism, idealism, opportunism, these are the isms that we need to avoid if we want to make sure that the collective is stronger than individuals. Because at the end of the day, it's harder for individuals to bring about change, but it is very easy for collectives to bring about change. And so that's why we want to avoid that. And then we also want to fight for ideological and principle struggle. We need to go and research what are the groups that we want to join? What are the communities that we want to join? What are the communities that align with the ideology or the principles that we hold dear? And we need to make sure that we are joining that fight for like a collective ideological struggle, a collective principle struggle. And then we also want to organize. We want to go touch grass. We just don't want to create dissent on social media because that is not helpful. And that is exactly what these big corporations want. They want to create dissent on social media because they benefit from it. Our collectives do not. Our movements do not. Our movements don't really benefit from only creating dissent online. There has to be work going on the ground to be able to achieve real change. Change cannot be achieved online. And that's something that we need to like push back against, like just remaining on like these virtual spaces and just dissenting on these virtual spaces, struggling on these virtual spaces. We need to go outside. We need to meet people. We need to make relationships with different communities. We need to understand the struggles of the people from across the world. And so that is how the first step, we combat liberalism. We combat these ideologies that have been fed to us throughout our lives. It is hard to fight these ideologies that come so naturally to you, but that is why we get stuck into echo chambers, because we believe what we've been taught, or the way we are engaging with these struggles on the ground. That's how it is supposed to be, but we need to just do better in making sure that we are combating these ideas and these ideologies. So that's the first step that we take to combat liberalism. Then moving on, we embrace the uneasiness. It's a very uneasy process to go out and to talk to communities or to talk to people that you know nothing about, that you haven't engaged with, people who might hold completely different views than you or completely different opinions than you. So definitely moving beyond the echo chambers, organizing on the ground, strengthening our movements, it's not an easy task at all. And it's extremely uncomfortable. But but it's not impossible. It can be done. And it is the most effective way to build our movements. And so that is something that we keep in mind, that yes, this is going to make me feel really uncomfortable. It's going to be really uneasy engaging with people who hold very right-wing views or very fascist views. And we think that these are people that might never be moved. But if you engage with them consistently, if you engage with them in creative ways, even those people can be moved. And that is how I will just put in an example here of my organizing when I came to New York City. So I'm currently organizing the Pakistani community in Coney Island Avenue, Little Pakistan. And when I came to the US, of course, I'm really new to the context of the US, how politics work here, what are the problems of the people, what are the issues of even my own community here. And especially when I talk about the Pakistani community and the community in Coney Island Avenue, that was one of the areas that was worst hit after Bay Ridge, after 9/11. So it is a highly surveilled, highly policed community. And Drum had been trying to build a base there for more than a decade. But because there was so much mistrust within the community of anybody coming from the outside, they were their own echo chamber. They were not accepting anyone coming from the outside. It was just really difficult to engage people there. But did we lose hope, even though it was more than 15 years and we were getting nowhere with that community? Did we lose hope? Did we stop trying? No, we didn't. We just kept on trying, because things are never static. They keep on changing. Dynamics change, context change. And so if you are consistent enough, you're able to also move communities or people which you would think in another time was never possible. And so because we were consistent with the community, and we use creative ways to engage with them, to build trust with them. It was hard to build trust with the community that has suffered so much after 9/11, that had been through like so much policing and so much violence at the hand of the NYPD, at the hands of the FBI. So it was really hard to build trust with a community like that, that's so scared, that has been so oppressed for decades. But because of our consistency and creativity, we were able to make an impact there. And successfully now, for a year, we have had a base within that particular neighborhood where we were not able to organize for 15 years. We have a base there. We have been able to organize people against the police, which has been a difficult task considering the people were so fearful of that. And we are having consistent actions, political education, and all of these different events within the community. And now is the time that the community does trust us, because we provided them with an alternative that they thought was impossible for 15 years. And so that was us engaging in protagonism and engaging in discipline, and just embracing the uneasiness that came along with organizing in places that are more difficult to engage with. Moving on, I think that we need to understand material context of where we are organizing, who we are organizing with, why are we organizing, who are we organizing against. So we look at it as organizers, as people of the movement. We want to look at it very scientifically, so that when we make assessments and when we propose solutions, those solutions are able to work based on the analysis that we did of the conditions of a certain place, a certain community, a certain institution. So that is what it means by understanding material context. The material reality can look really different in virtual spaces. It can look really different in echo chambers. But in reality, when you go on the ground, when you meet people, when you talk with them, you would see that whatever you had thought was the reality was actually just one side of it, or just a single perspective of it, because you were looking at it from a lens of you know uh, an echo chamber. So you were just constantly reinforcing the things that you already knew about them without going out, doing the research, and then making an assessment of whether what you were talking about, what you were thinking, the opinions that you had, were they really true on the ground as well? Or when you went to the ground, the reality was much more different than what you had imagined. Because what sometimes happen in movements is that we want to move um, really big things. We want to create tangible change. And because of that, because we are in spaces where we are educating ourselves, we are politically understanding what the theory of revolutionary struggles and all of that. And so we have with us our theory, we have with us our analysis of how things look like on the ground. And based off of that, we create, like, a hypothesis of this is the solution that might work, this is what might move people. But then when we go on the ground, the reality might be so different that it would not even come into that uh, theoretical framework of what you were thinking. The reality is completely beyond that theoretical framework. It's very context based, and the context looks really different on the ground. And so that is why it is very important that we look at it as a very scientific method when we want to engage with people from different struggles, from different movement spaces. We want to make sure that we first recognize what are the systems that we are all working against, what are the systems that we are fighting, and then we identify the contradictions of the current time. Like, what is the biggest issue that is almost faced by everyone across the world? People across the world are facing. And when we think of larger systems, we're thinking of the systems of capitalism, we are thinking of the systems of new imperialism that are affecting people all across the world. And then when we identify these contradictions, we then analyze what can be the resolution of these issues and these contradictions that we have made an assessment on. And that's how we plan an action. And when we do that based off of understanding the material context, the action that you plan is more effective than when you do it just based off of like ideological or hypothetical knowledge of the context. The material context is really different from just like a hypothetical context. So we want to make sure that we push ourselves to understand the material context of any struggle that we want to engage with. Moving on, I think education and agitation are a really important part of just breaking down echo chambers and just understanding reality in how it exists completely. And I think that political education is one of the tools that is very, very important and also very effective when you want to engage with communities. Yes, you want to convince people because you've realized and you've analyzed materially that there is a contradiction. This is a big system that is hurting everyone, and we want to defeat this system. That's something that you have analyzed on the based off of the material analysis that you did. But then, how do you move the people on the ground who do not really who haven't gone through that process of a material analysis? You help them see it too. How do you help them see it too? Through political education. Political education is the most effective tool. This is one of the pictures from the meetings that monthly meetings that we do within Little Pakistan, and just we do it across all 6 of our bases. We have 6 bases in New York City, and we do a monthly meeting in each one of those bases that we have. And what do we do? How do we make it easier also for these people to understand, because they have also been affected by by echo chambers within their community. So how do we move them beyond that as well? We make sure that what we are presenting them is in their own languages. So there is language justice involved. There are resources involved that makes it easier for them to understand. We have contextual knowledge from their communities that helps them understand these systems, helps them understand these contradictions that we are fighting. And so that is how we are able to build the leadership of the people there. So we do the political education part, have people make their own assessments, and then we also try to build their leadership. Because if we are working in working class communities, we are not the individuals that can take leadership there. They are the ones who are supposed to take the leadership, and they are the ones who will take effective leadership if they have enough resources with them. So political education is a resource that we provide them, and also we help them develop their leadership and develop their skills. That is on us to support them so that they can also view the world from the lens that we view the world from, but through a systematic way. And then the most effective way of engaging or just being connected with any community is outreach. You go on the streets, you go into these institutions, you go into these small businesses, you talk to people, you talk to them about what their issues are and what they think the solutions are. You stand with them when they're facing an issue. You are just there to so that they have that trust within you, that whenever we have a problem, whenever we face an issue, our community faces an issue, these are the people that stand with us. And that is the most effective way of building a movement, or building with people who then can become a part of the movement. Moving on, I think the last part is being tactical and strategic. We want to, sorry, one second. Yes, we want to be tactical and we want to be strategic. So yes, there are immediate issues that are faced by communities. There are immediate issues that might be faced by individuals within the communities, but that is a part of the struggle. It's not the whole struggle. And we have to make sure that we don't lose sight of the larger struggle, that our fight, these are smaller fights. When we fight for a campaign, when we fight for a policy win, when we fight for all of these things, these are just small blocks that we are building to fight a larger struggle. And that struggle is against these big bad systems that I mentioned earlier. And so you want to make sure that you invest in building a broader strategy that encapsulate that larger struggle that we are fighting for. And we also should always be prepared to carry out the objectives that we have for the larger struggle as well. So we want to engage with the community, but we also want to do interventions. We also want to push the community a little bit further. And because we don't want them to just be engaged with the issues that they face as a community. We want them to engage with other communities that might face similar or different issues. So we want them to make solidarity with other communities, other people who have been affected by the systems of oppression. So we want to always be prepared to carry out the objectives of like the broader strategy. We want to push people as well. And we can only push them if we're doing all of the previous steps that we have mentioned. People would not be pushed if they do not trust you. People would not be pushed if you do not invest in them. People will not be pushed if you do not educate them. And people will not be pushed if you have not developed their leadership. So all of that is important if you want to focus on a tactical and strategic larger fight as well. Moving on now to our next question, that how do we get our message across to people outside of our own echo chambers? So I think that this just relates to the question that we had earlier of how do we bring people into the movement. You need to engage in solidarity work. We are not only going to fight for our own communities. That is not effective. that does not unite us against these big systems. The systems are huge with so many resources and ideological apparatus that is so strong. And we want to fight against these really strong systems. We can only fight against this system if we are together. And it doesn't matter what communities we belong to. We have to make sure that there is solidarity work going across. So some of the examples of solidarity work that we've seen in recent time is the solidarity work for Palestine. But other than that, there are other ways of doing solidarity work. Climate issues are, global South is impacted with and by them the most. And so we want to engage with the people of the global South to make sure that we are doing solidarity work with them as well. We are fighting all the fights. And if we do it together, it becomes easier. An individual cannot do a lot of solidarity work, but if there are a lot of people that you're connected to, then you can definitely engage with in a lot of solidarity work. And Palestine solidarity work has been a great example of how the world and people from different contexts can come together to fight for one single cause. And also, um, in addition to solidarity work, you want to make sure that it's also done systematically. So you are looking for coalitions that are working. So there are coalitions of like people working on racial justice work, how racial issues affect people across the world, or how climate affects the people across the world, how gender affects people. So there are a lot of coalitions in these different campaign areas, and we want to make sure that we become a part of those coalitions, and we become a part of alliances. We form alliances with people. So for example, like I was telling about how the area that I am organizing at with the Pakistani community, in addition to the Arab community, has been most effective by NYPD's brutality, NYPD's oppression for decades now. And how do we make sure that those communities don't feel alone in them being the only community that is affected by that oppression? We built with other comrades, we build with our Black comrades, we build with our Indigenous comrades, we build from with our comrades from all across who have been affected even more by NYPD's brutality, and they understand that struggle, and they understand how to win those fights against these oppressive structures. So that is how we get our message across, and outside of our echo chambers. We build alliances with people, and we fight for them when they need it. We don't only fight for our own communities. That's not effective. We fight for everyone. If we think that if what someone is going through, a community is going through, is a direct result of these oppressive systems, we fight for them, and we make sure that our communities also start seeing things through those lenses. And that's how we move across our echo chambers, and our communities move outside of their echo chambers as well. And lastly, I would want to focus on how can we make an impact on those whose opinions we are seeking to change. So if you're going into a community with the purpose of organizing them, I think it's very important, first of all, to understand how that community operates. What are the dynamics of the community? What are the issues that are faced by the community? So these are all things that you need to know before you go into the community to organize them. And then you should have a continued presence in the community so that you can build up your trust, you can build up a reputation so that people want to rally behind you. So that is definitely a long-term process. And as I said, these are all processes that are uneasy, they're uncomfortable processes, but they're massively effective. They help us change things, they help us achieve victories. And so that is why we want to invest in them. And then lastly, we provide them with a powerful alternative, that this is something that is possible. So again, I would go back to a community example, that because of so much suppression by the police in the community, and in addition to that, just the NYPD paying a lot of informants within the community that came from the community. So the community was affected, or just like attacked by their own people. So they were Pakistani informants that were working with the police to have them catch people from their own community. So basically, they were breaking the community from the inside out, and so that is why over a course of 15 to 20 years, people had just the community had realized that it was just easier to go along with what the NYPD does and not like raise their voices and take any action. But whenever Drum would go in, and how we've like been able to build our reputation and trust with the community is that we would do actions on streets where the NYPD would not allow actions to happen. And when they were not able to do any sort of like repressive attitudes toward us while we were doing those actions, so we did a lot of Palestine actions within that community. So then people started realizing that maybe NYPD is not as powerful as we've always thought it to be. There is a possibility of doing actions in their face and them not being able to do anything about it. And so that is always the way to gain the trust with from a community and gain a reputation within a community. You provide a powerful alternative, and that is how these are some of the ways. This is just like me speaking from my experience of organizing in two contexts and things that I've seen work in, even when you're anywhere in the world. If you follow on these things, if you systematically think about it and tactically use these strategies, you are able to move, not only yourself move outside of echo chambers, but are able to help your communities move out of echo chambers as well, and resist and fight for the larger struggle that we are all fighting. And I will stop there. And if there are any questions or any comments on it, I would love to hear them.
Can I jump in and just say thank you a million times over? This was amazing. Um, it's oftentimes we talk about organizing.
Uh-oh, we just lost Amy. But I will echo her thanks and just say, yeah. Oh, Rehana, do you want to jump in here?
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm Rahana over here at A4. Yes, some technical difficulties, but I'm going to ask. I just wanted to thank you, Mohiba, so much, and for everyone for being here. And it was such a lovely presentation. We're going to be doing our next convo like this with Betty from CAB on 10/24. It's going to be on coalition building. And for now, I'm going to stop the recording and pause the live streaming and ask everyone else to leave and our residents to come on so that we can ask some questions.